On this edition of Indie Star Insider, I am pleased and privileged to have Robert from the band Satin here with me. We've been discussing a lot of alternative rock, and because we're men of a certain age, he's a little younger than I am, but we're men of a certain age, and we remember all this great alternative rock. And I must say, his music is indicative of that great period of time without sounding dated. So I'm looking forward to getting to know Robert from Satin. How you doing, man?
And not too bad. How you doing?
Doing all right. Doing all right. You know, we're going through a heat wave out here in Southern California. What else is new?
Yeah, the rest of the nation is probably very envious that we got like 80 plus degree weather the last few days.
Oh yeah, and it's great for the fires. You know, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to. This is fire setting weather right here. You know, this is fire setting weather. If you're a pyromaniac, you know, this is wonderful. High winds, a low humidity, and lots of brush. It's a great place. Yep. Everybody everywhere has their problems, man. I mean, there are places who are going to be shoveling out of 6 feet of snow pretty soon, but yeah. Right. It is California, which is where you've grown up. Tell us a little bit about your backstory and where you come from.
Yeah, I'm definitely a Southern California boy, born and raised. I lived in Ventura County most of my life, but I bounced in and out of LA. You know, I lived in La Mirada for a while, for example, and Pasadena area and such. So, I bounced around. I lived in Vegas a few years ago, and I could not wait to get out when I was there. Some people love it in Vegas. It was a little too hot for my taste, so I was very happy when California welcomed me back with open arms, and nice. I was very happy to come back.
Nice. Tell me a little bit about Vegas. I've wanted to live there myself. I think it would be hard for me because I'm already naturally an insomniac to be living in a place where nothing shuts down. But what was it like for you? Other than the weather, was there anything that was kind of hinky, kind of weird, made you miss Southern California more?
The entire time I was in Vegas, and at least for me personally, I know some people move there and they have a great time and more power to them. But for me, it just seemed like things that were very easy here in Southern California became very difficult. Like just getting my mail was like a real pain in the ass, for example. Huh? And, superficially, like the cost of living is less. And that's something a lot of people in Vegas, you naturally get a lot of people who are from Arizona or from here in California or other parts of the nation somehow wind up in Vegas. And they always say, oh, it's so cheap here. I couldn't afford to live in California and this, that, and the other. And in my experience, it's like the cost of living is half as much, but the jobs pay half as much.
That's true.
It seemed to kind of balance out. And fortunately, an opportunity came for me. I survived about 1.5 summers out there, and I barely made it through that. And when an opportunity came up for me to move back to California, I jumped on it immediately.
That's awesome.
Did not have you try to make the best out of a situation. In fact, actually, the model for the band's album cover, Drop Dead Gorgeous, I actually met the model. She's actually a Canadian. But a friend of mine who's living out there was a makeup artist, and I'd hang out with her and stuff on her shoots. And Nicole had flown out. She's from Calgary, Canada.
Alberta. Yeah,
Alberta. Yeah, thank you. And that's where I'd met her. So when we had finished up our album late last year, I hit up my friend out in Vegas and said, hey, what can we do? How can we arrange getting Nicole stateside so we could shoot and not just do the album cover, but do a little bit of album art and stuff, for the website and things like that. And I had shown Nicole some of the early recordings where I was at that time, and she really liked what she had heard. And that was something that stood in the back of my mind. Not only was she very attractive, but she liked the music, which meant a lot. At least she liked what she had heard. So that was important to me. And we had arranged that. And so I actually arranged the whole photo shoot out in Vegas. We drove out there she flew out there actually. Of course, she didn't drive out from Canada.
Nice.
And got some really great, got a gorgeous album cover and stuff, and she had that look I felt was just perfect for what I felt it fit the sound of the music, fit the sound of the album and the band.
Yeah, that is so important in today's age because people are always looking at pictures. Your music can be great, but you need to have some like in the past, cover art, album covers, liner jackets, things like that.
Yeah.
People still like that, but they like it on their phones now. And you still have to have an attractive presence. And for you to have the presence of mind of that was really good. Yeah, photography in Vegas, or at least on the way to Vegas, is great. Get out in the middle of those, 100 miles to nowhere areas, Baker grade, and, just take pictures in this desolate area is
Well, it's like
wonderful.
the U2's Joshua Tree album. Like those
Yeah,
Joshua trees, they only grow in that part of the world, in Eastern California, a little bit into Nevada. And that's,
right.
I mean, that's like something people love them, they're U2, and that's what many people would define as their best album, which was
Joshua Tree,
clearly
yeah.
shot out in that part of the exact part that you're talking about.
Exactly. And there's even the park, Joshua Tree National Park, where I used to hang out,
Yeah.
get away from the world, to just sleep in my car, find a place, and just see a million stars and just veg out. Have a little peyote. Come on, when in Rome, you do as the Romans. No, I'm playing, but yeah, it's something magical, mystical about the desert. I love driving out there, and I kind of had that feel about Vegas, but it's maybe not the best place to live. So let's rewind a little bit. Being a Southern California guy, tell me how you got into music. Where was your jump start? Who were your influences growing up? And when did you first pick up a guitar and go with it?
I have a fairly musical family. My uncle was a real talented piano player, and he had, when I was a kid, he had this like mountain, this huge rack, CD rack, and that he was, and this is like early mid 90s when CDs were really, whatever, $20 a pop or something like that. So to
Oh
have
yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
so for anyone to have CDs was almost unheard of. At least, none of my friends really had any real music collections to speak of and things like that. But my uncle had this huge rack, and of course I couldn't touch it. Don't touch that. And
Exactly.
but he mellowed out a little bit over the years, and he was such a pop culture, pop music fanatic. I mean, he actually subscribed to Billboard magazine, and he was really involved he really loves charts and musical influences and stuff. So through having conversations with him as I got a little older and stuff, and he, would start talking to me about these kinds of things. He had these Billboard books of #1 albums and #1 songs, and was able to get a feel for popular music through that avenue, through my uncle. And he also had piano was really his only instrument, but he had purchased a $100 nylon string guitar that he had mentioned to me one time. And when right around the time I started high school, I think maybe within the first week or two, I started really getting that creative bug of just wanting to write, and I had no musical experience before that. I'd never taken piano or played guitar before that, but I'd remembered my uncle had that nylon string that he had buried in his closet. And I asked him just very, nonchalant, maybe, a couple days later or something, said, "Hey, remember that guitar you mentioned to me? Can I have it?" And he was like, "Sure." He's basically like, "I bought it and never played it, so you could have it." And that
Right.
was really where I mainly got in a weird sense, maybe compared to most people. I started playing music because I actually wanted to write songs, and it seemed to me like if I want to write songs, I should probably learn how to play an instrument.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You can't be like, I want to be a songwriter, and then just sit there and be like, and look around. You have a table, and you just start going, yeah, yeah. This is gonna be #1, baby.
Yep. Yep.
No, it doesn't work that way. You gotta understand. You gotta learn music to write a song. So you got that guitar. How'd you learn? Was it self-taught, or did you have your uncle's help, or how'd you learn?
Yeah, that was the weird part. My uncle, in the sense that my uncle gave me the instrument, and then it was just kind of, here you go, good luck. It was kind of his, not in such a cold, demeanor or anything like that, but it was definitely, it was kind of understood, at least as far as what I understood, that it was up to me to figure it out from there. And
Hmm.
really wish I really wish I had the luxury of having YouTube or the internet being the powerhouse that it is now, because if you want to learn anything, you could just Google it or go on YouTube or something like that, and you can have these pristine instruction videos, multi-camera shots, and things like that. I would have definitely killed for that when I was in high school and stuff. So around my sophomore year, I met a friend whose name was Robert too, coincidentally enough, and he knew a whole whopping like 6 guitar chords. So he and I, we liked a lot of the same music, and we got along and stuff, and he taught me the 6 chords he knew, and I was on my way from there.
Yeah, yeah, and the 6 chords. I mean, Billy Joe from Green Day made it with 3 chords. It just
yeah, right.
you all you have to do is you have to have a musical mind to put those chords together into a progression. And if you have that, which I think you can be taught, but really I think you have to be born with it, to put these chords into progression and make a song that is decent or that makes musical sense, is a talent. So if you learn the chords, you're pretty much on your way if you know the basics of songwriting. So in high school, you would say you started messing around. Did you have a high school band?
Yeah, I jam with buddies and things like that. It wasn't until really around like my senior year, just out of high school, when I was really kind of able to say I was in a legit band for the first time. And like most bands, you're in one for maybe a few months or something like that. And of course, just most bands go horribly wrong and break up, or just things it kind of fizzles out and nothing becomes of it. But I was fortunate enough during that time to just try and work on my craft, both playing and writing. And
Yeah.
like you might imagine, in anything you write as a teenager, about 99% of it's total dog shit. And so there was a lot.
I remember that.
There are definitely a lot of lyrics. I found the first song, the first kind of quote unquote song I ever wrote. I actually opened up one of my old guitar cases and saw the printed up lyrics for it. I just completely cringed. I was like, oh my goodness. When I was 16, I thought this was genius,
Oh man. I know. Yeah, I'm cringing right now thinking of what I used to write when I was in my high school years, and just thinking of how hard life was, and thinking of, oh God, the pain. And I look at it now and I'm like, oh, I would have beat my ass if I knew me back then. Oh, yuck, gross. My guitar player from when we were in high school, he'll still pull out those songs and be like, dude, sing. And I'm like, you're a dick. You know how I feel about this. And he just laughs at me and goes, come on, I'll play the song, you sing. I was just like, no, I can't sing. I know that now. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. Was there pretty good, did you get to play some pretty big gigs out of high school, or did you play the bar scene, or how'd that work out?
Yeah, I was lucky enough. I started working at a music store when I was around that time. I was like 16, 17. And what was weird to me was the kind of, I guess you'd call it maybe a bit of a generation gap or a cultural shift or something, because I was the kid, of course, working. It was a small mom and pop music store. It had, 12, 14 employees kind of thing. Nice. And I was a teenager, yet pretty much everyone else, the next youngest person was like 32 or something. So there was a good, 10, 15 year gap between me and the next youngest person there.
Yeah.
And what threw me off was that they were all like the professional working musicians, the types that played top 40, they played disco cover bands, they did weddings, they did, festivals and local fairs and things like that, things that paid them cash money to offset the low paying, day job that they had working at a music store, basically.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And one of the drummer from one of those bands he liked my voice, and he knew I knew a few chords on the guitar, so he had recruited me to play. And it was incredibly challenging, because for me, where I had zero interest in learning like disco or music, for example, and these were songs. Some of them I knew, like Car Wash or something like that. But I mean, they shout out songs I'd never even heard of. They're like, oh, I have a flashlight. I'm like, flashlight? What the fuck is that? What the
flashlight?
Yeah, and I'm like, to this day, I don't even know what song that is. And I remember being on stage at like 16, I think I was 17 at this time, and just like mortified. I knew they were playing a set list that had 20 songs on it, and literally I was told by the band leader, who was the drummer, which should tell you a lot about this band, that just learn, you're paid to know these 6 songs. Like, this is what I'm paying. I'm getting a paid gig at like 17. I was getting paid like $100, which was like $1 million to me at the time.
Oh, yeah, that's big.
And we start off, I know like the first 2 or 3 songs, and then they start, playing these songs I'd never even heard of. And I'm like kind of playing air guitar on stage, and I'm like freaking out. So I learned real early on, I'm like, I do not want to do this, at all. I'd rather just focus my time and energy on original music and playing with guys my own age, and so I did a few gigs like that in my late teens and into my early 20s, into about 2021. And since I was playing with guys who were so much older than me, it was never an issue getting into clubs and bars. I never got carded because everyone else was so much older. The bouncer or the bartender would never even think of IDing me.
Oh no. By the way, I found flashlight.
Oh, okay. This is my first time hearing this thing.
That has
outside being on stage.
Oh, that is ridiculously awful and hard, and yeah, reminds me of the carnival we had over here where they're playing, play that funky music and all the disco standards. The 40 and 50-year-old girls all made up, wearing their best and shaking their booties out on the dance floor. And yeah, it's a typical thing. I mean, more power to them, but man, that would be scary if somebody was like, all right, disco, let's go. It's like, no. How about that?
Yep. But it was one of these things where it paid, like I mentioned. I mean, I got paid like $100 for my first professional gig, but also at least I had enough, I don't know what you want to call it. I don't want to put myself too high, but I definitely had enough foresight to realize that there was an opportunity there, an experience to have, and it was probably in my own best interest. As much as I didn't like the music and probably, quite frankly, didn't have the skill set at that time to really perform at the level needed, I definitely knew it was an opportunity that I should probably take advantage of.
Yeah. It just that is so scary though. Thinking like you're up there and you're like, you got that money pressure, you're getting paid, and you're like, I gotta perform, and you're young, and you haven't known the guitar or anything for a few years, and somebody's just like Rasputin, and you're like, wait a minute.
There was one point, I clearly remember the bass player was shouting out the guitar chords to me. He saw I was like a deer in the headlights, and at one point he was, I think we were playing like YMCA, to be honest, and he was shouting out the chords. He's like E minor, G, C, and so definitely there were a few early gigs like that for me, and just right around the end of high school, just out of high school type thing, and that was enough for me to say, yeah, I'm not doing. I'd rather not get paid and do original music than get paid $50, $100 and do weddings and things, playing the kind of music I don't really like. And that was something I saw with all of them. That they seem to be like the musician. They would learn things in order to get paid gigs, and that wasn't something that really interested me.
Right. Well, it's also the same thing with the out in Nashville. There's a recording studio on every corner, basically. And each recording studio employs session musicians because you have a lot of, pie-eyed young ladies going out there going, oh, I have a voice, but what am I going to do? And you have these studio musicians who are just the pros. You tell them an idea for a song, you give them a basic structure, and they bring it to life. And they get paid very, very well for that.
Right.
It's two different schools of thought. It's like, you have the artist thought where it's like, I want to make something of my own. I want to be creative. I want to do this. I want to be the person people are covering. I don't want to be the cover band.
Right.
And then you have the guys who are like, look, if the money's right. I mean, my buddy's a DJ. He'll DJ. His heart is gothic industrial. but he'll DJ weddings. And it's just so funny to see him in his goth gear, strapped up, wearing 18-hole docks and looking like a menace up there with his tattoos and just, spinning the hardest industrial from, years past. And then see him in a shirt and tie playing, YMCA. You're just like, well, what are you doing, man?
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so you decided to go on your own path. How'd that work for you at first? Was it difficult? Tell us a little bit about the experience.
Yeah, like one of the first like original bands I was in, I really met some really talented guys, and it was kind of a Pink Floyd meets Alice in Chains kind of sound, which just like blew my mind when I first heard them play. And I was real happy to get involved with them, and this is something, it was short lived. It was maybe a few months, and it was interesting watching the lead singer. We had a front man in that particular group, and he was just so creative. He had lyric books, and he seemed to be able to at least get the creative juices flowing whenever we'd bring out the guitars and stuff. And
Yeah.
that was a real learning experience for me, that when it comes to creativity, you don't need to like set aside a certain time of the day or be in a particular mood. You just really, need to learn how to keep that inspiration kind of open at all times, because you never know when an idea will pop in your head or an opportunity will present itself, I should say.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was something that really stood with me from that. And after that experience kind of came and went, I was able to kind of form my own band with a bunch of guys. We were all teenagers, early 20s at this point. And really from there, I mean, that was the first time I was kind of like a band leader. All times before that, it was, like I mentioned, it was other guys who were kind of the head of the group, so to speak. And after that, I was kind of like, I feel confident enough in my own abilities and my own vision that, maybe I should continue, with this kind of, not in any kind of egotistical kind of sense, but just, okay, I have an idea, I have a vision. Now let me pull the resources together to make this vision a reality.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with having confidence in yourself and pushing yourself out there to do it. I mean, if you're an unconfident musician, then you're going to be playing with yourself. And I know that didn't sound right. Phrasing. You're going to be playing only for yourself. You're going to be making stuff for yourself, because if you don't have that confidence, you're not going to put yourself out there. You're not going to get the most out of your experience, either playing live or playing on record, as they say. But you're going to be like, you're just going to be playing for yourself, playing for your own enjoyment, and I don't think that's egotistical at all. I think you need it. You need to have that confidence in yourself.
Yeah. I also learned a lot of my own limitations, if you will. I mean, for example, I don't think I'm a very good lead guitar player, or something I've never been terribly comfortable with. You put me in a situation, I can come up with a nice little melodic solo, and I do a few of the leads on the Drop Dead Gorgeous album. But when I met Dave, the guitar player in the band, David Bucci, he's a guy who grew up old school Van Halen. Steve Vai is a big guy. He really likes Richie Kotzen.
Oh man.
And he loves to solo and just kind of not a shred, not where there's smoke coming up from the fretboards type thing. But definitely that's his wheelhouse. And in that sense, we blend very well. As a guitar player myself, maybe it's because I started playing to write songs. I was never a guy who worshiped the guitar idols or had guitar heroes and things like that. I more viewed it as a tool, or as a means to an end, so to speak, kind of like what we discussed earlier. So I definitely think I have a little bit of a different angle when it comes to playing. I'm very clean and very precise, whether if I'm doing arpeggiations or strummings or the occasional lead bit or something. Dave definitely can let it rip and just you'll hear on Magnolia, or the audience will hear on Magnolia. His leads are the way he plays. I don't think I would, if I practiced for 20 years, I don't think I could play like he plays.
Yeah. it's funny because my the guitar player I mentioned before, who loves to torture me with my old songs, he can come up with leads out of nowhere, and he loves the bottom of the neck. He just loves that place, and he just goes crazy. And he's self-taught, and he just goes nuts on that. And he can come up with a lead that goes around the block and up the street and down the hill and back home. And I've never met anybody who could come up with such leads. I think that's a true talent,
Yeah,
right
right.
there. So Enrique, if you're listening, yeah, brother, I respect your talent, even if you don't respect mine. You always tell me I suck. So,
Oh
um,
man.
it's the relationship. It's you know
Yeah,
how it
it sounds
goes.
like.
It's a band relationship.
Oh yeah.
So especially when you play drums, it's like, where's your roadie? He's loading up his snare right now. But yeah, the lead is a completely different animal than rhythm, and it takes a completely different animal to play lead and rhythm and sing and do all of that in a way where you want to have a shred and solo, or you want to have like a like you said, a progression where there's a solo and a rhythm part. And yeah, I mean, I think you're pretty much in the majority there where you play rhythm and sing. I think that's a lot of people actually.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I
So
was never one of those guys where, for whatever reason, I just I tried teaching myself some solos, and even I took lessons briefly. I had a guitar teacher try to teach me some Van Halen licks and things, and it just felt, I just never felt like I was really getting it, and I was never really passionate about it. It just seemed like I'd sit there and practice these scales or these finger techniques and things to hammer on pull offs, kind of boring terms to non musicians, I'm sure, but it just seemed like just sitting there doing a repetitive little like hammer on or something just really bored the living shit out of me.
oh
And
yeah,
so it didn't, so that's part of it too. I'm sure if I had the motivation to sit down and actually do it, to be honest, I'd probably be at least pretty decent at it. But it's just something that
yeah.
just felt like I'd rather do something else with my time. I'd rather try to write another song or something, try to find a melodic chord change that I like, as opposed to just sitting here practicing aimless little like frills and licks and things like that.
Yeah, it's there's so many different ways you can be. First of all, Eddie Van Halen, I mean, he's a completely different creature than anyone. I don't know
Right.
if
Right.
he's like Martian, or he's from Jupiter. I don't know. This guy was pulling stuff out of his backside in the late 70s that guitarists would look at today and be like, I can't do that. He's really just a unique creature. And I would say, do not, like a guitarist I used to play with. In fact, I played with this band called the Dogs, a punk band back in early 2000s, and we put out a CD and everything. He was inspired by Eddie Van Halen, and he was, there were a lot of chord progressions there from Van Halen and that type of music. It's a really tough thing to follow. Trying to say, oh, well, I'm like, Eddie Van Halen, Steve Vai. I mean, these guys are virtuosos, and right, they do that boring shit with the hammer up and hammer down, things like that. They do that boring shit, but at the same time, it kind of comes natural to them, if that makes sense. And if something
Yeah.
comes
Right.
natural to you, you're more inclined to work on it, and you're more inclined to just. I know guys who all they can do is solos, can't play a chord to save their life, but boy can they shred when it comes to
Yep.
all the way down on the neck, and you're just like, damn. But you ask them to play a chord, and they're like, what's that? I got a
Yeah.
chord
Right.
right here, it's plugged into my guitar. You're just like, jeez. No, play a chord. What do you want me to do? Strum the chord? And then you're just like, chord, musical term, and they're like, yeah. And then just get back to shredding,
Yep.
and they'll just shred. So this band Satin, is this the same band from high school?
No, actually, the bass player Scott is actually from that original band, and we've been in and out of touch over the years and stuff. And just the way it worked out when I moved back from Vegas, he was living down in like Oceanside, Carlsbad area, And he wound up coincidentally moving back to the same area at the same time I moved back from Vegas. So we had reconvened at that time, and I'd already begun some of the tracking, and I'd met Dave. He and I were working together and stuff. So I had just kind of reached out, just on a whim. I hadn't heard from him in a few years, and I just kind of reached out to him saying, "Hey, Scott, how you doing?" And he goes, "Hey, buddy, just moved back into town." I'm like, "Hey, coincidentally, I did too." And so we were able. Yeah, right. And I love his bass play.
Yes.
Not only is he a good guy, but he's just a real talented bass player. He's a huge Pink Floyd guy. Loves him as Roger Waters. But I always felt he was more of a John Entwistle, kind of Who kind of bass player, kind of unorthodox in the sense where he'd kind of do that lead bass spots. I know Waters does that, but my mind always goes, I was a big Who guy in high school and stuff, and so I tend to think of more John Entwistle, which is fine. You can't go wrong either way. Well, so it was one of those.
You have Pete Townsend. Sorry to interrupt, but Pete Townsend, he's the only guy who's playing guitar. The Who is one of these rare four pieces that sounds full.
Yeah.
So, but you have to have that bass player jacked up to like 9 or 10 on the amp, because the guitar comes through with more treble, and it gives it kind of a tinny sound. If it's just the guitar, you have the bass, you mesh that together and you make things happen. But yeah, I get it. Entwistle was awesome. At least your bass player wasn't trying to be Claypool or Flea, like, a couple that I've known that are, you're playing a simple rock 3-chord and they're just like, and you're just like, no. Right, the locomotive, brother. You're the locomotive principle, where you just go. That's all you need to do. You don't need to jump around the track. Okay, you just follow the track. Just go. But I'm sorry, that sparked something for me. So he was more of an Entwistle guy, and adds that fuller sound, right?
Yeah. And just I always felt whenever I played with him, like we always seemed to kind of sync up. He's got a weird. I don't mean in a bad way or anything like that, but it seems like he's able to jump on to anything that he hears. And in all the years that I played with him off and on, I've always noticed that the music I play always sounds better when he's involved versus when I'm playing with another bass player, or if he's not involved. So I was really, I felt very, happy and fortunate that he had moved back to the area at the same time I did, and was really glad. I felt very comfortable when we were able to plug back in. It'd been a few years since the original band that we were in, so it was pretty much like the next day for the most part. I mean, there was, we weren't playing any of the older material that I'd written back at that time, but it never really seemed to matter to him. It always seemed I never needed to come up with chord charts for him or really break down a song. It just seemed like if I started playing it, he was almost immediately always able to jump right in and just start making it sound better, just doing his thing.
So how did Satin come to be?
I just was always so passionate about, I always had this kind of vision of the kind of band I wanted to be in, or the kind of music I wanted to create that I felt was in the same vein of the stuff I grew up on or stuff I'd hear on the radio, but I never felt I was really hearing or getting, so to speak, so it was definitely a spinoff of my own influences, I guess you could say. And since I was always into writing, I would just, as I would write material and stuff, I would really sit there and kind of go, okay, is this the kind of sound that I'm going for and stuff? And a lot of the songs from the Drop Dead Gorgeous album, I mean, really the entire album is just it's a very personal, lyrically speaking and such. It's originally I was starting off with the kind of machismo, kind of sex, confidence, and power, kind of, I don't know, lyrical themes or concept or whatever. But after, I had a relationship that went south that had a real powerful effect on me and stuff. And I started realizing a lot of these songs I was writing weren't really the sex, confidence, and power kind of themes that I maybe had originally intended. As I would kind of analyze the lyrics or kind of go over them and stuff, I was like, wow, there's a lot of unrequited love here. There's a lot of deeply personal things, and not in a therapeutic kind of, I'm sitting on a couch and talking to Dr. Melfi from The Sopranos or anything like that, but just very honest.
Yeah.
And I felt for myself, I felt a lot of the lyrics and lyricists, like, Pete Townsend is a good example. Like we're talking about the Who, like Townsend is a very, very honest songwriter, and with a lot, the goofy squeeze box songs aside and things like that. But a lot of the things from a lot of his lyrics and stuff really come from an angle of, especially from the really from the entire catalog, but the By Numbers album, for example, or even elements of Quadrophenia and stuff, are from his own personal experiences and his viewpoints of growing up in a post World War II, England and things like that. And so with those kinds of things involved, I didn't want to be one of these songwriters who made things up or wrote gibberish lyrics and that just kind of sounded good. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I had decided at some point that wasn't kind of those weren't the kinds of songs I necessarily wanted to write. I felt that if I was honest, the more honest I could be with my own lyrics and the songs that I'm involved in, the more connected I would feel with them. And I would think, and I could be wrong, but I would think that you'd be more inclined to connect with others.
That's true. The funny thing, we were talking about Kurt Cobain off air. His lyrics are complete and utter like nonsense. And the most fun thing was finding people who would say, "Oh, he was so deep." And it's like, deep? What are you talking about? These lyrics make absolutely no sense. I think you get more when you put lyrics out there that are catchy, but also that people can relate to, like you said, and also, don't be fake about it, because you were saying, I had this breakup, and the breakup in turn changed your songwriting style, which is good, because there's nothing worse than somebody who's broken up trying to sing about how happy they are.
Right.
And it just comes through disingenuous and like, yeah, you're happy. Okay. I think that's where songwriters, they have a gift where they don't need to see a therapist. They can write their issues out, and they can produce art and make something relatable for everybody. And they don't have to worry about, paying some person $100 an hour to tell them all this stuff. What, are they going to write a song out of it? No, they're going to tell you what they think and then see the next person and you're done, but you actually create something out of your sadness and loss or whatever it is. So I think that's a gift that songwriters have.
Yeah, definitely. I try not to one of the challenges, I should say, or was to not make it to take things from different angles as much as possible, and not just like rinse, wash, repeat, or just, if you're in a particular mindset of being sad or depressed or something, to always sing about being sad and depressed, to try and step out of yourself and see things from a different viewpoint and stuff. And I worked on some creative, did some creative writing exercises and stuff to kind of expand those horizons, so to speak, and take on different viewpoints. And so whenever I felt like I was hitting a wall, lyrically, I started doing some of these creative writing exercises, which helped kind of expand my point of view, so to speak. And that really helped out immensely. And there were a lot of things where there were a few songs that Fall to Pieces is the first one that comes to mind, that I almost felt it was too personal. I almost felt like, maybe I shouldn't include this, or maybe I don't know, maybe I should rewrite some of the lyrics and stuff. And just the more I thought about it, I'm like, no, I think the more honest and forthcoming I think is probably better. If I'm uncomfortable with it in that sense, then maybe I should just go ahead with it, because I don't think, I remember Aaron, I'm blanking on his name, the guy from Stained.
Aaron Lewis.
Thank you. I remember in the LA Times back when Stained was really big during the It's Been a While, and when It's Been a While and Outside were so big back in 01, 02 in that range and stuff. And I remember he was saying something along the lines, I have to paraphrase because it's been a long time since I read it, but just how people were coming up to him saying, hey, I really he was basically saying the same thing I was mentioning, where he felt maybe he shouldn't be so forthcoming with some of his lyrics. And then he was saying at gigs and shows that he would play, he'd get kids and teenagers and stuff coming up to him, young adults and things like that, just telling them like how much they empathized and related to a lot of, a lot of Stain's music and his lyrics and stuff. So that was something that rattled in the back of my mind, from when I read that interview from back in the day. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, that's probably the best thing to do, is to be as honest and forthcoming as possible.
Yeah, it was quite a disparity from Mud Shovel to It's Been a While. Mud Shovel was just complete anger, and then you hear like Outside and all of that, and you're just like, wait a minute, what happened to this guy?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
He has feelings. Who knew? Yeah, it was kind of a crazy time for Stain, but it went well for them. So you guys, you wrote this album, or you came up with this album. Tell us the story behind it. Drop Dead Gorgeous. When did it release? And how was the marketing and everything like that? I like to talk about the digital marketing with artists, especially artists between the ages of like 30 and 50, because you came up in the CD era. So digital marketing is kind of something where that is a sea change. It's not something you grew up with. It's not something you're used to. Tell us a little bit about the concept behind the album, and also the marketing the whole marketing thing, and how you guys worked around that and did with that.
Well, David was a little bit ahead of me with he had released a solo album back in 2015, and I actually helped him with that. It was just right around the time I had moved out to Vegas, and so while I was in Vegas, he was telling me about his experiences. Especially, he really took to social media with a fervor, and naturally, I was not ignorant to social media, is involved with, knew Twitter and Facebook and all that fun stuff. But he had found that kind of deeper level in order to start kind of marketing and branding and getting out there, so to speak. He had found, he had done some interviews and gotten on some playlists and things like that. So I had a little bit of a heads up through him of how to go about it. So while I was kind of doing some of the, I guess production would be the appropriate word, and getting as much recorded as I could on my own, and stuff. I definitely was looking into like how I was, while I was doing all that, he was telling me about what he was going through. So I knew, okay, this is at least a starting point for the band to move forward on. So after when we did the photo shoot, when Nicole flew out for the album cover and everything, I did all kinds of behind the scenes. I recorded as much as possible. And definitely a learning experience. I wish, as after you do something, you realize there's like 50 brilliant ideas you didn't do,
Yeah,
but,
exactly. Of course.
I captured as much behind the scenes stuff as possible, and was posting on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all that, and getting involved with that, doing interviews such as with yourself, connecting with a lot of podcasts and online radio and non-reporting radio stations. I had a limited number of CDs printed up to obviously to mail out to sites for review, to maybe get some potential airplay, and as well as just an extra stream of revenue when we go out and play. It's definitely it's easier. If someone likes what he's hearing, it's like, dude, got a CD here, $10 or something, boom, So not only do you have the online stuff with streaming and digital downloads, as a potential revenue source or whatever, but it's also very clear having at least some physical product on hand for when you play and people like what they hear. They may not necessarily remember to look you up on Spotify or look you up on YouTube later on. If you get that sale right there at that show, then please, by all means, anything a musician can do to get an extra buck, it's probably in your best interest to take advantage of.
Yeah, exactly. Merch is the only reason people go out nowadays, to really play shows,
right?
Because the market, like we knew it as kids and as young adults, is not the same. I mean, there was a brief period of nostalgic, what's the word? Nostalgic like fervor for vinyl, and that's still going on, I think. And everybody was releasing their stuff on vinyl, and now it's cassettes.
Yeah, I've been seeing that recently.
Yeah. I remember the first band that sent me a cassette was a band by the name of Mueller, Muller, out of Rochester. And that was like 2 years ago. And I started thinking, wait a minute, these guys are ahead of the curve on something. They wouldn't just send me a cassette to be ironic. They're looking to market this as a cassette. And that's turned out to be something that kids are like, oh, look at these quaint little objects with knobs or little holes where you can wind what is this stuff in here? It plays music. How does that work? And it's really becoming a thing. But yeah, merch and music sales at the venues are huge. So so that's how it works now. What do you think of the digital music revolution? Do you think are you yay, nay? Are you like jaded with it? Are you happy with it? Or is it a way to get your music around the world and really put your name out there?
I definitely have that nostalgia. I mean, it's weird. I have a very mixed bag, and I think you're right. People definitely, there's this like sense of looking back with these like what's it called, like rose tinted lenses or whatever. Yeah, I've been to Amoeba Records and Salzer's and a lot of these independent record stores and stuff. And
yeah,
in some ways it's great to go in, when I was a teenager or something like that, it'd be great to go in. There was definitely this cool kind of almost dangerous sense with a lot of stuff you'd see with posters and stuff the kind of music that was being played. But I think what people forget with a lot of these independent record stores is just how pretentious all the employees are.
Oh,
and so you get some guy with some overweight guy with a blue haired mohawk and a bone through his nose. He's going to judge you no matter what you buy. If you buy,
comic book guy from The Simpsons. I mean, just music like, you're wearing a Nirvana shirt. Are you familiar with the work on Sub Pop? And
yeah, right.
A kid who got the Nirvana shirt at Target, and he's like, Sub a who? Child, you don't know Nirvana unless you've heard their backroom tapes from Sub Pop. Yep. Yuck. Not a good experience. Yes. Buying the music from, SoundCloud or Spotify and, downloading your own playlists and stuff. I mean, that's where it's at, but it kind of sucks for the musicians. But then again, I mean, it's great for the musicians because if you put yourself up on the platform, some guy in the Ukraine's like, dude, I dig your shit. And you're like, you dig my stuff. Wow, this is incredible. So you do get a more worldwide reach. So there are plus and minuses, but yeah, dude, the pretentious guy at the music store. Then again, I find myself doing that. I see kids wearing Nirvana, the classic Nirvana shirt, the happy face, and I'm like, have you even heard Bleach? It's just like, I turn into that guy.
Yeah, right.
Floyd the Barber. Have you heard Floyd the Barber, you little...
Have you heard Sliver?
Have you heard Sliver? And I'm not talking about that version. I'm talking about the other version.
Yeah, right.
You get that way when you get to a certain age, and a kid wearing a Stone Temple Pilots shirt, you're just like, do you know? Because we came up with MTV and the Wicked Garden video and Vaseline and all these great tracks, and you're just like, you have no clue, child. Maybe they do, I don't know, but the pretentiousness, it's kind of hard to get away from.
Yeah, a lot of digital stuff opens up a lot of doors, like you were mentioning, and I'm not sure if I would really have the opportunity now to be talking to someone such as yourself or to even afford to put the music out there if it was still under the old model of 15, 20 years ago. I mean, the idea that you'd have to go groveling on some record executive's floor, and if he doesn't feel that you're whatever, if you don't look right, you're not the right age, or maybe he just doesn't like you, you do not pass go, do not collect $200. So definitely those walls and barriers have been not completely obliterated, but definitely the floodgates have been open. At the same time, I mean, there's just this explosion of guys, like we were kind of talking off air. I know you get inundated with music submissions and stuff that's hard for someone such as yourself to even keep track of.
Oh, God.
And stuff. So it can make it easier to get lost in the shuffle because there's so much more competition now, so to speak.
Yeah, and like I told you, we accept 1 in 5. It's the rule of the dorms. 1 to 5. If you know that song, 5 to 1. 1 to
Yeah,
5.
yeah.
Yeah, it's basically, that's an average, and we get a lot of music that is well done, or that the talent's there, but it's not well done, radio ready, or if you're singing in your bathroom to your iPhone, that's not going to get on the radio. Uh, no joke, I get that a lot. And like I'm supposed to go, hey, this guy's a great talent, I'm going to put him on the air. No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, right.
That's why the term indie is like looked down upon by a lot of people, but I can go into that later. Uh, so bottom line, you got a band, you got an EP out. Tell us where we can find this record, full length album. I'm sorry, where we can
Yes.
find this full length album, where people can buy it, and where are the socials where people can hook up with you.
Yeah, Drop Dead Gorgeous is the name of the album. The band name is Satin. It's available on all platforms: Spotify, Amazon, Tidal, all of the above. I have some physical product too. We got a Bandcamp page, and Instagram, all the social media handles and stuff. And Instagram is at Satin underscore sounds. The Twitter is at Satin underscore band. Website is www.satinsounds.net, net. And Bandcamp is Satin1, I believe, is what the Bandcamp page is. So all the stuff's available digital, and like I said, we have some physical product too if people are interested in.
Cool. That sounds really good. Sounds really good. And yeah, so people can pick that up. The name of the album is Drop Dead Gorgeous, and the band name is Satin. And this has been Robert from Satin here on Indie Star Insider. Thank you for your time, man. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem.